There we go. Got to take the mute off. We're off to a great start. I'm Defoe, Cody Defoe. This is my co-host once again this week, OLED Ed Fries, joining me as Astrid is somewhere overseas enjoying some time away, some time off, some time to relax and recuperate before we get to next week, where we're going to have a hell of a show on to discuss between us when she is back. Ed, how are you this evening? What did you think of Impact before we get into the deep details?
I thought they did less good this week with better matches this week than they did last week with better segments but less good matches. If that makes any sense.
Sure. I'm sure we'll get into that
as we go.
I'm sure we'll get into that as we talk about the matches and the segments along the way. We are very orange, and we did not coordinate this today, but you got an orange shirt, I got an orange shirt, and I got some new orange hair. So apparently this is just the week to be orange.
It is.
Hello, Barry. You are the first here, I believe. You won the pleasure of enjoying Ed and I going off the rails. Hopefully we're going to keep it a little bit more on the rails than we did last week and try to keep this under the 2-hour mark that we somehow exceeded last week.
Whoops.
Let's jump into it because we got to start off BTI tonight, Ed, with your man, your guy, your favorite star on the show, Zicky Dice taking on Champagne Raj Singh with some local radio
DJs.
hosts.
Yeah, local DJs that I'm just like, really, Impact? I thought you were better than this.
We had Adrian Heavyweight Hernandez and DJ Ocho.
Yes, but David Penzer got them reversed. And of course they announced it, like, just leave it. If he screws it up, just leave it. None of us are gonna give a damn. We don't know that the DJs are the wrong ones.
I wish we could, Barry, because you know how Astrid and I have our feelings about Taylor Wilde, but that unfortunately was a very important segment tonight when we get there. Yeah. And tell me what you thought about Zicky in this match.
I thought Zicky looked good in this match. Zicky Dice reminds me, from a body frame perspective, from a wrestling perspective too, a little bit of Steve Corino. He gives me that Steve Corino type feel, and I always liked Steve Corino in ECW. I always liked Steve Corino in ROH. I always thought he was a super talented dude. I think Zicky's got a little bit more charisma and a little bit more character to him. This was a fine BTI match. Like I said, it would be a fine main event match if I was WWE programming. It's good. It's fine. Raj Singh impressed me less this week than he did last week. I thought he looked better last week, but then again, that might have been because Shearer was in the match.
I mean, Shearer was in ringside. Does that count for anything?
Sure. I mean, yeah, it's a great idea for local marketing. But again, all right, I don't want to bash Impact because I love Impact. But when you're putting 300 people max, 100 people max in these buildings that they run for these Impact tapings, I don't think bringing the local DJs is going to do much for your publicity. At this point, you need to convince somebody with some star power to come to your show.
Bringing your local DJs, though, it's not going to put any more people in the building, I don't think, because obviously they're limited on space in the buildings they're booking, and I feel like at this point, some of the places they're going, especially the trip up here to Canada, they probably could be booking bigger venues and selling more tickets.
Yeah.
But having your local DJs, I'm assuming having them on the show meant these DJs were talking about what they were going to be doing. We're talking about the fact that they were involved. We're talking about it on their radio shows. So anyone listening to their radio shows is A, aware that Impact is in Vegas and at Sam's Town that week. B, they probably were promoting it all day today that they were going to be involved in this match to get people to actually tune into the free BTI match on YouTube or Impact Plus or wherever the people were being pushed to go to. Yep. Being an outsider and not local to Vegas, and even on the times I've been in Vegas, I don't tend to listen to the radio.
Yep.
It doesn't do anything for me as a televised program viewer.
I understand the idea of using local radio DJs to promote it. When WWE comes to Boston, the sports show is the show that gets them every time they come. Like one of the guys, they had his birthday and they had Lacey Evans. They had a picture of Lacey Evans being held by the 4 DJs in the morning show because 2 of them are big wrestling fans. And this was way back when she was still the Sweet Southern Belle. And it's like, yeah, you use your DJs for that. But there's almost no point to bringing them on the show. The same reason why you don't need Busted Open on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. What I could have done without in this match was us having to have a 5-minute discussion about how rich Champagne Raj Singh is, the Swarovski diamonds and how many of them are on his gear, the fact that he's apparently spraying himself with Drakkar cologne, and then a conversation about how Zicky Dice doesn't even know what cologne is, and his scent is just man musk, and like, I'm sure there's a lot better things we could have had Matt and Gia, or Tom and Gia talking about.
I was gonna ask who is, because I've never actually sat down. Okay, so this is the same lady who helps with the backstage promos, right?
Yep. She's only just started doing it over the last month and a bit that she joined the BTI commentary team. Yeah. So she's growing, she's advancing, and I've been a little harsh on her off the bat, and I appreciate that she's getting better every week. Just some of the topics, and especially when it comes to Zicky Dice on these shows, some of the topics they decide to talk about make me question.
She just seems like... You remember the movie Up? Speaking of things that are orange. Remember the dog in Up? She reminds me of the dog in Up. All of a sudden, there's just some other random thought that's in her mind that she just blurts out of her mouth. Like, she's not bad. She doesn't take away from the broadcast to a huge degree. Because it's BTI. If she were on the main show, I'd be a little more annoyed. But it's BTI, and I have to hear her for 15 minutes.
Yeah, she gets one match, and she's just kind of getting her feet wet and getting used to it. And like, the very first time I heard her on there, I kind of went off with Astrid about the fact that she just felt out of place, and she had no idea what she was doing. And she is growing. She's getting there. But then there was a couple weeks back with Astrid where I pointed out when whoever it was in the match hit their finishing move, instead of getting excited or amped up at them hitting the finishing move, it was like she was somebody in the crowd just turning to the person they're attending with and like, oh my God, he just hit this move.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, I don't want to spend too much time on BTI, but like, it was a fine match. It's a good promotion for the show. Again,
what did you think of the finish from Raj and the fact that they apparently have dubbed his new finishing move the Champagne Pop?
I liked Crazy Steve in the next segment. Can we talk about that? I mean, it's fine. It's broadly fine. It's whatever.
It reminded me of Ron Simmons when he used to use the Dominator.
Yeah. I mean, I have to watch Gallus every week do a running, spinning power bomb with a boot to the face. Like, I'm okay with shitty finishing moves. I don't care.
I think that's long enough for BTI. I think you've said it. We don't want to spend too much time on them. We got a very long breakdown of last week's events to start this show. It felt like we basically went through the entirety of last week's show in 5 minutes at the start of this main show.
Yeah, I turned on the show 5 minutes late, and I just started to see the beginning of the entrance for Decay. And I'm like, ooh, I didn't miss anything. And I was worried because I thought I'd have to go back and see the first 5 minutes. And I'm like, oh, nope, I don't have to do that.
No, the only thing you would have missed is the point at the end of the recap segment where they had PCO standing on a hill, raising his hands and screaming at the moon for Eddie.
Yeah. I have thoughts and opinions about that. We'll get to that.
We'll get through the PCO stuff eventually here, but let's talk about the opening match because you mentioned it. Crazy Steve and Black Taurus as the Decay taking on Speedball Mike Bailey and Jonathan Gresham in a tag team match. Personally, I didn't even really feel like I got much time to focus on Crazy Steve or Taurus or really even Jonathan Gresham in this match. This really just felt like a showcase for Speedball.
Yeah. But I liked how they didn't make Steve and Taurus feel like small bananas when it was obvious as this match progressed that it was all about building Gresham and Bailey. But they kept Crazy Steve and Taurus looking like competent competition, which I like. Because every now and then, some wrestling promotions will go ahead and be like, well, we need to get these guys over. We'll just put them in there and have the match. But Black Taurus is such a great competitor. And I always love watching him because he's so different from half the other people in every wrestling company. But yeah, I mean, this was the Gresham and Bailey show, and like you said, mostly the Bailey show.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I felt the big thing I took away, and they almost just spelled it out for us at the end of the match too, was that the match was kind of a means of displaying that Gresham and Bailey, having been opponents, now they have a little bit more of being on sort of on the same page, or at least having the respect in each other's abilities. That Gresham spent a lot of the last half of the match just keeping one of the opponents out of the ring or like away, so that Speedball could just do what Speedball does. And it really was just Speedball Mike Bailey hitting all of his moves, looking good in the ring, looking clean, looking crisp, dominating, and Gresham just as like the sidekick out there holding the guy off, to the point where you even had, while Crazy Steve was laying down outside the ring after taking a move, Gresham's just sitting there hanging outside the ropes waiting for Steve to get up again to come to him, because he has nothing else to do while he's waiting for Speedball to do what Speedball is doing. And the end of the match, after Speedball put it away and they're celebrating, kind of the tense celebration after the victory, really just kind of set the stage that you knew what was coming next out of this.
Yeah, the only reason I didn't know, and like in my notes I put, post-match felt odd. Because I didn't remember that they had already had a match. And I'm like, why are these guys acting like they don't like each other, but they like each other, but they don't like each other? Like, they're both, like, slapping each other like jocks who, like, from rival schools, and one of them's moved to town, and he's like, well, you know, I'm the star. No, I'm the star. No, I'm the star. It was like, why do I give a damn? Just be a tag team. Like, I want to see these two guys face Ace and Bay. Like, that seems like a fun match. Can we just do that? No, we have to do these two guys fighting each other. Okay,
these two are just such strong individual competitors that it feels like they have to be individuals. Like, they're doing great as a team together, but they've just got that animosity and that friendly rivalry almost between them, where Gresham challenged Bailey and beat him. So now I'm going to jump ahead a little bit here, because later on in the show, we just got a quick backstage segment of them where they were kind of celebrating the victory, but also still a little tense in the backstage. And Bailey says, you know, even though we've won and we make a good team, don't forget, or I'm not going to forget that you beat me. So now I'm going to challenge you to a match, to which we get confirmation that is going to happen next week at Sacrifice.
Which is great. Like, that's going to be a fun match. I'm all for watching that match. I'm just like, everybody rags on, and for good reason, WWE doing, can they coexist? Can the tag team partners get along? And I'm like, you told that story in a slightly different way, where you didn't tell us that they can't coexist, but you spelled it out for us that you were telling the story that they can't coexist.
Kind of the setup for this, right, is before their first match, Santino put them in a match where they were tag team partners and basically laid it out like, I'm going to make you guys tag team partners so you can pre-scout each other before your match at this pay-per-view. Yeah. And now we come out of that match, they've finished and like moving forward, and now they're teaming up again. But then by teaming up again, they're like, no, you know what? We're not finished. We have unfinished business. I'm not happy you beat me. I want to get my, equal this out between us. So let's have another match and see if you can beat me twice, kind of idea.
Yeah, I have a bad feeling we're going to see this again at Rebellion too. Just saying.
I mean, these two are such great competitors that it's one of those rare occasions where if they go the route of the 50-50 booking and have to go to the tiebreak, hell, at Rebellion, give me a 2 out of 3 falls match. I'll take it. Yeah, or an Iron Man match. Give me these two in a 60-minute Iron Man match at Rebellion. I'll sit in my seat or stand on my seat or sit at the edge of my seat for the entire 60 minutes.
Like if they do something special to that Rebellion match, that I'll give that the benefit of the doubt. But as of right now, I'm just like, Bailey's going to win next week. We're going to go into, Rebellion. They're going to say, well, I got one, you got one. We got to find out who the better man is. And they get another match at Rebellion. And yeah, it'll be a great match. But I'm like, can't we do more with Gresham? We already talked about how he loses. And if we're both thinking, yeah, Bailey's probably going to win this and they're going to 50-50 this, that does nothing for Gresham. It's another time where Gresham just loses another big match.
Just a chance to really put Gresham on kind of that pedestal of what he's capable of without actually putting him over necessarily. Because we all know Gresham can put on 5-star matches left, right, and center with damn near anybody in the ring.
We saw it
and
last week.
Speedball Mike Bailey has been doing nothing but putting on 5-star matches since he joined Impact. So it's two guys that they don't really have a position for in any major title picture at this moment. And it's a way to keep them both relevant and in everybody's mind and really put them in the spotlight without having to put them in a title scene yet.
Wouldn't these two guys make great challengers number 1 and 2 for Steve Maclin post-Rebellion?
Absolutely.
Just saying. I'm like, wouldn't these two guys be perfect, like, guys that you can throw at Maclin? Because, God, you need to throw somebody at Maclin. Because he can't cut a promo to save his life. I re-remembered that when I saw him tonight. I'm like, oh, there's a reason why WWE wasn't fond of keeping you.
Yeah, Barry. I believe, if I remember correctly, I think Gresham only signed like for a year or something. I don't know exactly how long it was, but it feels like they're keeping him in the spotlight without putting him too high on a pedestal.
I also think the other thing is, I think he's more happy with just being in the ring, and I don't think he cares about how he's booked, like win-loss record, because he's there with Jordan. He's being able to be there with her, and they're on the road together. And at least this time, he's on TV. Yeah. Which was the biggest problem he had when he left AEW, was they weren't putting him on TV, and then they said, go drop the title in the opening match.
Yeah, and not just that, but he's on TV and he's being still booked in prime positions. Even if he is taking losses, there's still main event caliber matches. He's still getting the opportunity to show off his technical expertise and his pure style wrestling, that I'm perfectly okay with Gresham being in this spot if he's just here filling a roster spot for a year or less. And, you know, if he's not signed for long term, we don't want to put the title on him and then have him walk or anything. So you have to kind of use what you've got. And if that's putting him in high profile feuds to keep the guys you want kept hot, left, or like simmering while they're waiting for their turn to boil, Gresham is the guy that can be almost that gatekeeper to the title by being that hot feud right before they get to the Josh or Maclin feud.
Yeah, I just wish that they would let him win enough in the beginning to make that feel a little bit better. You know what I'm saying? That's the only thing I have about that.
Yeah. Well, let's move on from that. We've kind of jumped ahead a little bit because that backstage segment took place a little while later, but we had a different backstage segment after this match was done, where we have Josh Alexander, Rich Swann, and Frankie Kazarian backstage talking with Gia. Really appreciated Josh kind of opening this, laying out all of the title reigns between these three guys. That between them, they have 7 tag team title reigns, 7 X Division title reigns, and 3 Impact World title reigns. Sadly, not Kazarian for any of those 3. But
they have 2 and a bit title reigns.
Well, they have...
Because isn't Josh's first title reign that one that was like all of like 5 minutes before Moose?
Yeah, the one where Moose took it from him. But
yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean, between his one now that's coming up on a year and Rich Swann's title reign that ended with the Kenny Omega title unification match, or not unification, but the All for Nothing match. Those 2 title reigns were enough to make up for the third one being a one and done.
Yeah, it was a good promo. I like this. I like the way Team Impact talks. I like the way Team Impact looks as a team. I love Maclin walking in. Letting him talk is sometimes either a really good idea or a really bad idea. And maybe it was just that I was a little bit sleepy watching the beginning of this show, but he walked in and he's like, you know, you've already beat these guys. Are they your teammates because of that? And I'm like, well, yeah, that's the exact reason why they're his teammates, but we didn't need you to point that out.
I did like how he pointed out. It almost felt like he was trying to throw some animosity out there between the team, throw a little bit of a crack in the team formation by calling them non-threats. Like, is that why you picked these guys? Because you've already beat them, so they're non-threats? And you could see that, like, little tick from Rich Swann when he got called a non-threat. Like, oh, really? That's what you think I am? And he pointed it at Maclin. But I feel like that's going to spin inwards leading into Sacrifice now, where we're going to see like possibly some of those little hints of a crack start to form there, that Josh is going to be left without his backup heading into Rebellion.
Sounds good. Maclin has all the tools to be a star. He just needs Deanna to help him cut a better promo. You've got Deanna at home. Like, you can practice this in the mirror with Deanna. She can help you. She's a really good promo.
Some people just don't have that skill, though, right?
I agree, but if he's got everything else and he's in the world title picture and he's, I feel, about to become their world champion. And as John Cena once said to Roman Reigns, it's a promo, kid. If you want to be the top dog, you have to learn how to do this.
Yeah, I mean, being put in the position to, they've slow burned him all the way to this point, handing the reins to him, no pun intended, and letting him sink or swim at this point. Who knows? Maybe he's just somebody who doesn't do as well on the chase, and he'll be a hell of a top dog. Again, like no point intended.
Yeah, I have no problem giving him the title and just finding out what he's got. I'm all in favor of that. It's just, we've seen what happens when your top dog, when the face of your franchise is a guy who can't go to a radio station and sell your show. And Impact needs to be able to have the face of their franchise going and doing as much media as possible and selling the show, because they have a great die-hard little fan base. But to get it to continue to blossom like Josh has, you need to keep that fire going.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting if he does win the title at Rebellion, coming out of it and seeing how he is handled, how he handles the spotlight, and just where we go next. Because, I mean, I feel like even Josh on the promo side has kind of taken a step back and really let his opponents dictate some of the stuff recently, especially the Kazarian story. Yep. So going into Maclin, it shouldn't be that big of a change from where we've almost ended up with Josh at this point.
Yeah, but I mean, I feel like when he was in the Bully feud, when he was in the Kazarian feud, he was cutting a decent promo. Like, I felt like when Josh talks, you were like, yeah, I like this. I like hearing Josh. When you watch on Impact on the YouTube stuff, and they bring up the old matches, and Josh is on there, he's personable. He feels like he can connect with people. I feel a connection to him. I don't feel that connection when I see Maclin start talking on television.
It's fair. I feel a little bit more, but maybe it's just because I've been watching and been invested in him a lot longer.
I agree. I'm an outsider looking in, and my opinion is that. I defer to the people who watch the show on a weekly basis, but I'm just trying to give the outsider opinion of somebody popping in and out.
Next promo we go to was also with Gia. She had a very busy start to the show. We have Gisele Shaw with Jay Vidal and Savannah Evans back there. Gisele talks a little bit about Deanna costing her the match to Mickey, how she thinks Deanna's just jealous of her, jealous because she has a personal stylist, jealous because she has a head of security, and at Sacrifice it'll just be a repeat of No Surrender because Deanna's just jealous that she can't beat her.
Yeah.
And then your best friend rolls onto screen.
He did. Johnny Swinger saved this segment. As much as he ruined last week, he saved this week. Because this was great, as you say. So Zicky Dice and Swinger walk in, or roll in his little thing. And Swinger wants to wrestle Gia. And I'm like, all right. Like, Impact does that. Maybe that's what they're going to do. That seemed weird. Gia wanted no part of it. As Barry says, Johnny Swinger saves another promo. So he goes ahead and he's like, he looks at Savannah and he's like, nope, don't want you. Now, I wasn't paying attention. I was looking at something else. And he says no to him. Please tell me when he said no to him, he was looking at Jay and not Gisele.
I think so.
Okay.
Or maybe to Savannah.
That works too. At least with Savannah, it's not as bad as if he says it to Gisele. And that's what I was worried about. I didn't go back and watch it because I didn't want to know if he did or didn't.
You know what?
I really hope he didn't.
It might be.
Because that's just...
It wasn't Savannah. It couldn't be Savannah because now that you're mentioning it, he looked at Savannah and said something about her being too tall.
Yeah, he did. And I know that it was Jay, and I know that they had a conversation where they come back to Jay after. So I'm hoping it was... I'm hoping it was no to Gisele in the beginning, no to Savannah, no to Jay, come back to Jay after talking to Zicky. But I wasn't looking, and he said no to him, and I just froze. Because I'm like, oh God, did Johnny Swinger just say that to Gisele Shaw? Because that's bad if it happened. Especially for a taped product.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
you re-record, you definitely re-record that promo if you do that.
I hope it was Jay. I wasn't paying close enough attention, but I hope it was Jay.
But I like the idea of fighting Jay. And I like Jay's reaction where Gisele looks at Jay and she goes, does he not know that you're a wrestler? Because Swinger looks at him and goes, you're going to take your first bumps, kid. And just leaves. And I'm like, as Swinger's walking away before Gisele said anything, I'm like, I swear Jay Vidal's an actual wrestler. Like, I swear this person is an actual competitor.
This was his first match since signing his full-time contract.
Yeah, but he's...
I believe I saw him on a BTI last year, I want to say against Jason Hodge.
Okay.
That he's definitely had some BTI matches. He's been on the show. He's wrestled for Impact before. But this, with Johnny Swinger, is his first actual match since he signed his full-time contract a couple months back.
And as Barry says, it's very often hard to tell with Johnny Swinger. I agree. Like I said, it's just a bad... Like I said, I think he's talking to Jay, and I think that I'm making a much to do about nothing. But in the poor opportunity, I'm just like, please tell me he wasn't... Yes. Hello, Mel. You here to keep us on track with Astrid over the Atlantic?
I feel like Astrid's probably sleeping in a hotel room somewhere on the other side of the Atlantic.
I think she's flying as of now, if I remember the conversation from earlier.
Maybe she's coming home today. I don't even know what day it is, okay?
It's Impact Day, Cody.
Give it a couple hours, I'll need to switch into something green.
Yes.
The other thing that I did just note right at the end is Swinger and Zicky are leaving the promo and heading off when Swinger tells Zicky to take him to Sammartino's office.
Yep.
Like, wrong past WWE champion.
But it's Swinger, so you let it slide.
I almost appreciate that he's kind of just playing off of Santino's knack of calling people all the wrong names.
Oh, wait. I would say, wait till we get to Santino's segment later on. I can't wait for this.
Maclin and Heath, Ed. I have a little bit of mixed feelings on this match, so I want you to tell me first what you thought of it.
I thought Heath looked all right. I didn't think it was the greatest showing for Maclin going into a big weekend. Granted, Maclin doesn't have anything going on the next 2 weeks, it doesn't seem like. I don't think he's wrestling at Sacrifice. I don't think he's wrestling at Multiverse United. So I don't think he has anything until Rebellion. But it didn't hit the way I thought it was going to hit going into it. Because Heath is such a good hand. And he's such a good competitor. And it just felt like there was little to no chemistry between the two. Which is unfortunate because they're both really talented and I like them both a lot.
For me, it almost just felt like a long squash.
Yeah.
And that's why I have mixed feelings on it, because it felt like Maclin came out of it looking dominant and strong, but it also felt like it was a really poor way to show off Heath, who was just part of of the number one contenders tournament leading into this. He was part of the match that Maclin won. Like, for Maclin to go over him that easy just a couple weeks after Heath was part of that number one contenders match seemed like a little bit of a misstep. And I don't speak that way about Impact very often, I find, but this just felt like it was a miss. The match itself was fine. I just Heath isn't the guy that I would have had in this spot.
No, I would have honestly, I would have preferred putting Rhino in there. I think it makes a whole lot more sense if it's Rhino. Um, if you have people like Johnny Swinger and Zicky Dice, this is the position I think that they need to be in. Like, I think Zicky Dice getting 5 to 10 minutes in the ring with Steve Maclin, letting Steve Maclin take his time and dissect Zicky Dice would be great for both of them. As opposed to having Zicky take on Champagne Raj.
Yeah. I mean, you could also have Maclin taking on Raj Singh, or you could have Maclin taking on Shira.
Yeah. Like, it just felt, as Barry says, Heath's a decent enough character. He's a decent enough wrestler. Find it hard to care. I found it hard to care about the match. I nodded off for a couple minutes at the end of this match and had to go back to rewatch the finish.
Yeah, I find it hard to get invested in a match like this where it's somebody that I don't think should be getting beaten that bad leading into a main match when there's plenty of other guys. Like, you could just as easily have had like a Kevin Knight or a Hotch or a Skylar or a lot of the different, like a Crazy Steve or a Black Taurus, right? Like, they could have been in this match instead of the tag match. There's so many different guys you could have put in this position, and I don't think Heath was the one that should have been there.
I also don't think that, like I said, I mean, I know you said Steve looked dominant. I think if you're gonna do a squash, it needs to be an absolute domination squash for Steve right now. I don't think the long squashes do him as good as just a straight Jordan Gray style squash from last week.
The next backstage segment, I'm going to say, was one of my bigger hits for the night. Because Rosemary on screen, we gave a ton of time about Rosemary last week. Rosemary owned the screen again in this segment, talking about their match against the Coven, how, they missed their mark on Killer Kelly, but they managed to ensnare the Coven. You have Jessica kind of really hyping it up that she's interested in the black magic and thinks the tarot cards are really cool. Taya and Rosemary basically tell her like she can take this match off, that they'll handle defending the titles, and she can go do what she really likes. And I think they sent her off for mimosas, if I heard what they sent right.
They did, which confused the hell out of me when she came out with them later.
That's kind of been since she made the change to Jessica.
But I was going to say, I really like this segment. I like the setup that was going on. I like the interplay between the three of them. Because in a promo where 3 people are there, it's often 2 people talking to each other and one person just kind of butting in. But they let Jessica be a third piece to this, and it circles the 3 of them.
Yeah, they've done really well with that since forming trio. And then, Taya being scared of the magic and afraid of Jessica finding out that they've kept from her that she's really Havoc. And then kind of the tease from Rosemary that would it be so bad if Havoc were to return?
Yeah.
And given what's come out this week and what we know about Taya, I like that we've had a lot of little teases now leading in the direction that we're probably getting Havoc back.
I like Jessica. Jessica's fine, but there's something special about, and I go all the way back. I don't go to just Havoc with Rosemary. I go all the way to, Death Mask, shooting her from the ground up Havoc. Like almost Awesome Kong style, where, it's the thick thighs, it's the stomach, it's that slow build all the way up her to make her feel like this indomitable monster. That's the Havoc I want to have come back.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I've always been a fan of Havoc ever since I first discovered her being on Impact, and her first couple matches that I ever watched, she immediately took me as someone who is very capable and very competent in the ring. I'd love the idea of going back, maybe all the way back to the Father James Mitchell version, since he was there and teased it recently, but even just as far back as the Decay Havoc, and having Rosemary and her reunite with Steve and Taurus again here in the near future would be a nice piece to kind of bring back full circle.
There was a bunch of people in the chat during the match, the opening match, that we're talking about wanting Havoc and Rosemary to come back now that Taya seems to be heading to the shores of Jacksonville.
Yeah. After this, we had PCO wandering the streets of Vegas, screaming for Eddie, and then we had the Speedball and Bailey interaction backstage that we already talked about.
Mm-hmm. In my notes, I have PCO sadly isn't dead.
And then we got the Johnny Swinger and Jay Vidal match. And the first thing I wrote was, it's awesome to see Vidal finally get to wrestle again, because it's been a long time as a side character. And I enjoy Jay Vidal in the ring. I think he's got something there that really deserves to be explored a little further, as opposed to just being Giselle's sidekick forever.
Yeah. I thought Jay Vidal did a really good job in this match. I was impressed. You know, my first time seeing him in the ring, I was impressed with this. I was less impressed with the way that they decided to structure the match, where it was so much about the outside shenanigans with Zicky getting tossed, and then Gisele and Savannah getting tossed but not getting tossed, and Deanna coming out and all of that.
It was a lot of shenanigans. It was a lot of
fluff for a match that I didn't care about. And I thought that was weird.
I did enjoy Swinger in the corner trying to take a timeout when Jay Vidal was running in at him, and then Zicky reprimanding the ref from the corner like a boxing coach. Like, that was a timeout, ref! That was a timeout!
Like I said, Zicky and Swinger are great together. But it just feels, like I said, it just feels like I want to see more of Zicky on TV. Like, this is better use of Zicky. At least he's at the wrestling ring. So it's more for him, as opposed to just, you know, pushing around Johnny Swinger on his Andre the Giant fake thing. So that's what they're mocking with the little carriage, right?
Yeah, like, not just Andre, right? Like, wasn't that used consistently in the 80s that a lot of the wrestlers pulled out?
It was at one WrestleMania that WWE did, because it was the one, I think it was at Ford's Field, where they had like the mile-long entrance ramp. But it's always remembered for me. I always remember it because it's the one where Andre, when he loses, he's like hanging over the side of it, and Bobby Heenan's like crowded in it and just crying his eyes out because Hogan beat Andre.
I mean, I vaguely remember, I think, Randy Savage coming out in one, or Hulk coming out in one at that Mania.
Yeah.
But what I remember it more so for was early PlayStation video games, where it was an option for your create a superstar.
Yes.
Yeah, as you said, the rest of the shenanigans, obviously, Savannah and Gisele try and interfere, get themselves tossed too. And then while they're in the process of going back up the ramp is when Deanna decides that she's going to attack Gisele. Savannah attacks Deanna. There's chaos. The ladies are all being held back from each other. Johnny Swinger is clearly too distracted watching the ladies fight with each other to be paying attention to the match, and turns around into, best I can describe it, looked like a Claymore kick from Jay Vidal.
Yeah, some kind of running kick.
It basically looked like Drew McIntyre's Claymore.
Good for
him. Or we're talking
man.
Impact. Should I be referring to him as Drew Galloway?
If you're gonna steal from a superstar. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. The Design had a backstage segment next. A lot of words that didn't really feel like it said anything.
Yeah, it said exactly what we talked about last week, where he talked about, you know, for the last little bit, these 5 weeks, he's done the 5 tests, and then last week was test number 6. And, he was supposed to do it. And then Sammy comes barreling in and, hey, y'all screwed me. How am I supposed to win and do the 6th test if y'all are screwing with me? And all I can think of is the story of Ted DiBiase running in when he didn't kick out and the ref counted him down, and walking in. That ref tried to F-O me. To Vince McMahon. That's what I saw when Sammy comes barreling in. That's the only thing I saw was that, because I just watched that Ted DiBiase thing with Cody Rhodes earlier. But anyways, sorry. I everything relates to WWE for me.
Off the rails already, Ed.
We're 45 minutes in and we're almost halfway through the show. It's fine. But I like this because Sammy's like, you guys tried to screw me. And he's like, and Deaners looks at him and goes, what makes you think that the 6th test was about you winning? what makes you think that it wasn't just about what it was? That you were supposed to sit there and take your punishment for screwing up with Connor. You made Connor lose, so now you have to be punished. He's like, are you okay with that? And Sammy's like, yeah, that's fine. And then they walked off, and I'm like, all right. This is exactly what me and you talked about, and what we hoped it was going to be, is that the 6th test was Sammy learning to take punishment.
But we didn't get any kind of confirmation about what step 7 is. Basically, He's like, are you willing to accept that this is step 6 and accept your punishment and take your punishment like a man and move on to step 7? And Callahan's like, yes. And he's like, okay. And then
they walked away. I wish there would have been. I'm assuming we're getting it. I'm assuming that means we're getting it at Rebellion.
Yeah. Because if it was going to be at Sacrifice, it would have had to have been set up today.
No, I think you could, theoretically, you could set it up next week. You have time on next week's Impact to do that.
Depends on what next week's Impact is, because they announced that next week's Impact is going to be a very special look at Multiverse. Or no, that's the following week, right?
That's the following week. No, yes. Multiverse is the Thursday night show.
Yes.
Because it's Mania week, so they can't do it on Friday because
yep.
There's way too much going on Friday.
Yeah. PCO is still in the streets outside Samstown Casino now, screaming for Eddie.
PCO.
Tommy Dreamer is backstage having a conversation with somebody. I'm just going to name him Greg because we never did figure out who Greg was last week.
Yep, this is Gregory.
Mickey comes storming in, asking if Dreamer has heard about this match that they've been booked in next week against Bully Ray and Masha. And Mickey's concerned for Dreamer that he's taken this match the night before his Busted Open match.
Yep.
To which Jordan comes walking in off screen and says, maybe you should be more worried about yourself having to fight Masha the night before fighting me.
Yeah, it was... It just felt like a cluster of a segment where it's like we have to get this context in, but we don't care if anybody gives a damn about it. And I'm like, fine. Like, that's a cool main event. But again, it's like, why are we putting one of our biggest matches on the card for Sacrifice in jeopardy the night before the show? It's just, like Jordan says, it's just an odd choice. I wouldn't have Mickey and Tommy versus Bully and Masha the night before. That should have been what was on this week's show. And I think that you could have done the tag matches back-to-back nights. And I think that would have been really cool. To have Team Impact main event next week's show against Bullet Club and have the result that we had, and then have Team Impact go into wrestle Time Machine the night after. And then the week after, he has to take on Kushida.
Yeah, it's fair.
We do have Barry jumping in here. I wonder how many calls the police got from people looking out their hotel windows and seeing PKO walk down the street with a shovel. I always wonder when like wrestling companies do these insane things in public, like how many clearances they have to do and how many people they have to call to make sure that nobody reports things. So we don't have things like what happened when Stone Cold went to Brian Pillman's house and we had people calling the police because they thought Stone Cold Steve Austin shot Brian Pillman on television.
The French-Canadian Frankenstein walking down the street dragging a shovel would raise alarms? Is that what you're suggesting?
I think the more alarming thing is you have a guy with a shovel over his head screaming somebody's name. I think that's the bigger problem. Like I don't think the funny thing is you're doing it in Vegas where honestly it's probably not the strangest thing going on in the street in Vegas. Yeah. Like that's the only thing I can think of as to why you do it in Vegas is because honestly it's probably not that strange there.
Nobody would even bat an eye to it. They probably just think they're an actor in costume.
Probably. Vegas is wild, dude.
Well, let's just get into that because we're here.
Oh God, do we have to?
Barry's kind of rounded us into the PCO conversation, and we have Eddie Edwards unannouncedly coming to the ring, and starts talking about how he's moved on. Honor No More is over. The past no longer matters. It's time for him to focus on himself and his future, but the people won't let him move forward. And the obsessed PCO keeps stalking him. And how is he supposed to move on to his future when the past just keeps coming back for him? And PCO's dead, so now's the time for him to move on, because I guess Eddie wasn't watching these segments in between where PCO's stalking down the streets after him.
I mean, would you watch the PCO segments if you were Eddie Edwards?
To which we now get the thunder strike and the ominous music, and PCO arrives carrying his shovel. And I guess we figured out who was driving the vehicle last week, and it wasn't either of who you or I thought it was.
Nope. And honestly, I'm disappointed because I think the world of this person, and I'm just like, really? This is the best we can do for this guy?
I guess we realized that Kenny King didn't have anything else going for him since he just kind of faded out of Honor No More. There was never really any reason for why him and Eddie weren't left together after Honor No More disbanded. He just kind of faded away and went and did the Kenny King thing, and now they're like, oh, I guess maybe we can bring him back and finish this story with Honor No More. Sure, let's do that. So we get a premeditated attack, assault, beatdown by Kenny King and Eddie Edwards on PCO, to which PCO valiantly tries to fight off two guys and look like a monster and keeps getting up and got a nasty cut on the back of his head that I'm kind of concerned for while beating, because that looked really bad and in a bad location, but
it's PCO.
I guess.
This felt like it went on 10 years too long for me. And I specifically used the word years, because it felt like this segment just never ended. The beatdown went on forever. Yeah, I agree. I'm worried about PCO. That cut was pretty nasty. That being said, when this is the same guy who's being shocked to life with a car battery, like, our worry for PCO is kind of in that middle range where it's like, if this were anybody else, I'd be worried. It's PCO, I treat it like Moxley. If he's still standing, he's probably okay.
Now, I don't know if anybody's seen or heard from Vincent since his contract supposedly ended. I personally would like to see Vincent back in Impact, back with PCO, to really bring this story home.
Yep. Vincent is posting. Him and Dutch are still together working indie shows. He's showed up once at the back of an NXT show off camera. I don't believe they ever had him on camera during that show. He might have been flashed on camera, but he's not been brought on. It doesn't look like he's coming in. I would love to see him finish this off, because I think it's apparent the Kingdom aren't coming back. You have the rest of these guys. So you either bring in Vincent to help work with PCO, or you bring in the guy PCO was using on the indies before he got paired with Vincent. And I forget who it was that he was working with that was his manager at the time.
Barry brings up this point here, and it's a good point. It's kind of what we said about Gresham earlier too, is they really don't seem to know what to do with Kenny. They want to use him. They keep having him on TV, but they're just sticking him in random places and random stories. And Kenny King's story right now is so incoherent and non-cohesive that he's just jumping. Like, 1 minute he's here, and then all of a sudden he's down here, and then he jumps in here, and then he's back here. And you never know what Kenny King is going to do next right now. And it's kind of wild that a guy that talented and that capable is just kind of floundering openly.
This has been going on Kenny King's entire career in Impact. I think it's one of Impact's major failings. The fact that they could never quite figure out what to do with Kenny King. I mean, to put it in perspective, he was once in a faction called the BDK. The other members of that faction are
Lashley
MVP
and MVP.
No, wasn't it MVP and Samojo?
No, it was MVP and Lashley.
Oh, was it Lashley? Like this dude is ultra talented. There are so many things he could be doing. You've got to be able to find something for Kenny King to do. You've got to be able to find a coherent story. Because like you said, there's just no rhyme or reason. He does the stuff with Honor No More. He disappears for what seems like forever, and then pops up trying to fight Mike Bailey, and then he loses the final battle with Mike Bailey, which is fine. That was a cool match. It was interesting. He lost the match. But then he goes away for another 4 or 5 months, and then all of a sudden pops up, and now he's back working.
4 or 5 weeks, not months.
Weeks, months. It feels like forever. It's Kenny King. He's just never around. Like, it's just weird. Like, I don't know. It's strange.
Like, at this point, this guy's got to have some opportunity for something, right? Like, I know he lost the number one contenders tournament, and he lost the number one contenders match when it came to going after the X Division title and when it came to going after the world title. But Kenny King and Trey Miguel, just despite the fact that they're both working on the heel side of the spectrum right now, those two guys are far too talented to not at some point find a way to put them together, you'd think.
Yeah, you would think. But Impact's got to either figure out what to do with him or let him go. Because I think in Triple H's hands, and I don't know if Triple H has any interest in him, but in the hands of Triple H or the hands of Shawn Michaels, I could see Kenny King doing a lot of great things, whether it be on the main roster, whether it be in NXT.
You know what? If Kenny King were to take a trip and go and reunite himself with Lashley and MVP, I'd be on board with it. Even if it is in a position where, you know, maybe you do reunite the Cedric and Shelton with them as well and have like a full group there, or have him take out one of Cedric or Shelton and take their place. He had such chemistry with MVP and Lashley back in BDK that I'd be okay with him doing that. But I never want to suggest for somebody to leave Impact. I never want... Impact is so strapped for talent right now, and Kenny King is so extremely talented. I want Impact to find a way to make him matter, to make him a focal point and a central point of their programming. Kenny King should be in the position that Bully Ray and... Kenny King should just be in the position that Tommy Dreamer is in right now. Like, why do we have a Dreamer match and we've got Kenny King floundering?
Yeah. And like I said, I don't want Kenny King to leave. Honestly, I think the best place for him is Impact. When you look at the wrestling landscape, the best place for Kenny King is in Impact. But if Impact can't figure out how to best utilize him, for him, I want him to leave. It's not good for Impact. It would be a loss for Impact. But at the same time, at this point, it doesn't seem like Kenny King's doing any... Unless we're missing something behind the scenes, it doesn't feel like Kenny King's doing anything wrong. He's just not getting...
The fact that he's been out and about, and ROH is the only place that's ever really used him to his fullest potential, I feel. Mm-hmm. I don't feel like him leaving Impact would necessarily be best for him either. Because I think if he'd had the opportunity to go anywhere else, he would have taken it before coming back and re-signing long-term with Impact again.
I agree. Like I said, I don't know if WWE has any interest in him in the slightest. I mean, he was on Tough Enough. Like, that's how far back he goes. He was on Tough Enough. I think the world of this guy, and I just want him to be successful. I mean, no, because I don't think he fits Bullet Club. Like, honestly, I don't think that Chris Bay fits Bullet Club. I think Austin Aries fits Bullet Club. I think Chris Bay is already a stretch being in Bullet Club. I think
Bay and Aries have really developed their characters enough, and I think seeing them with Kenta tonight really felt like a more cohesive Bullet Club.
No, I just mean in general. Like, if I look at Bullet Club and I look at the guys who've been in Bullet Club, when I look at Chris Bay, he's not the kind of guy that I think of being in Bullet Club. But yes, him with Ace Austin work so well together, especially with Kenta. That three-man unit is an absolute show-stealing unit. Even though Kenta had a really bad night tonight, it felt like.
Yeah. We'll get there.
Yeah.
Backstage segment. We finally have Santino on our screen.
Yes.
With a former tag team partner of his, and he's excited that they're together in Vegas. Dango walks up as his former partner leaves the screen and asks, "Is that?" And Santino stops him and says, Well, my name has been relinquished. His name's still trademarked, so you can't say his name. Say his name and he appears. I believe in Joe Hendry. And that's exactly what happens. Joe Hendry appears from right behind I think it was a plant or a sign that Santino was standing in front of.
I thought it was a door. I thought it was a fake, like a Bailey fake door. I honestly thought it was a fake door.
And surprises both Dango and Santino. And basically he's asking to enact the rematch clause. And Santino's like, you're the champion. You don't have a rematch clause. Like, not mine. I want to enact Brian Myers' rematch clause because ever since I beat him for the title, he hasn't had his rematch.
Barry apparently thinks it was a toilet, so...
I mean, maybe. Maybe it was a locker. He's popped out of lockers before, too.
I thought this was great. I mean, we'll just say it because we're not going to get in trouble, having Kozlov on the screen was fantastic. Seeing him and Santino together, it took me a few seconds. I had to go back and rewatch the segment to figure out who it was. But when Dango walks up and he's all excited and Santino's like, no, we don't do it. We don't say his name. And then that's when Joe Hendry pops out. I'm just like, as I didn't even see Joe Hendry coming. Like, in my mind's eye of this segment, he said the words and I still didn't think about Joe Hendry.
It literally was the most perfect use of the say his name line since they've started using it.
Oh, it was, like I said, and it works because of the fact that I didn't see it coming for the first time. Like 90% of the times you see these things a mile away. Yeah. And this time Santino got it with like just a pure segment that worked.
Yeah.
And absolutely. the three of them with that comedy are just perfect together.
Yeah. And he asks for Brian Myers' rematch, and Santino grants it to him. Okay, you can have the match with Brian Myers at Sacrifice. And then I missed what Dango said. He starts going off on basically like offering himself to be Joe Hendry's partner or to help him out.
He was fangirling.
Yeah.
He was
and Santino's like, okay, it's getting weird. Stop. And then decides to make for next week a tag team match of Dango and Joe Hendry versus Brian Myers and Moose. Right the night before Sacrifice, when we're going to get that Digital Media Championship rematch.
Mm-hmm.
This whole segment was excellent. Like, Santino and Dango just have the perfect amount of chemistry. This was an absolutely perfect way to use Kozlov without actually having to acknowledge who he was, because anyone who knows Santino knows the history. Mm-hmm. And then just playing that into Joe Hendry flawlessly. Leave it to Santino Marella to find a way to actually integrate, say his name, in a way that fits so easily.
This is why Santino deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. I'll just say it. They're announcing Hall of Fame classes. I've been seeing a lot of clips because CVV just sat down with him. I think Santino belongs in the WWE Hall of Fame. I think he is one of the best comedic wrestlers of the last 20 years. He's up there with R-Truth. He's up there with Toru Yano. He's up there with Nakazawa.
I mean, let's not ignore the obvious here. Breezango deserves to be in that conversation too.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. I'm thinking, like, when I think of Breezango's that next level down from that special level of Yano, Truth, Nakazawa, because those guys are special.
I would include Axel and Bo Dallas in that conversation too.
Yeah, but like I said, I think they're that next level down. Like
the fact that they're a tag team, I think, is what separates them.
Yep.
Because Breezango and the B team had to play off each other in such a way, whereas Santino did it by himself. Toru Yano does it by himself. R-Truth does it by himself. So yeah, they are excellent, but the team still deserve to be in that conversation alongside some of the best comedy acts.
The Fashion Files and that match, I believe it was at Backlash, where you have Tyler Breeze in multiple different comedic outfits throughout the match. At one point, he's the grandma.
Yeah.
Facing the Usos for the tag team titles. I mean, chef's kiss. But again, that's another company.
We digress.
We do digress. This was great. Hendry, Dango, and the fact that Joe Hendry's like off-put by Dango in this entire segment just makes it that much funnier. Yeah. As Barry jumps in and says, WWE and AEW seem too often scared to do the daft comedy, but Impact is more than happy to. That's what makes it fun. I think WWE isn't so much scared to as they do it.
WWE do comedy, but they don't do the daft comedy.
I agree, and I think that's where Barry's coming from. Like, they just don't go silly enough sometimes. They don't embrace the silly comedy the way some other people do, and I agree. But I think WWE does comedy very well.
R-Truth, Santino. In terms of daft, I guess I would include the Boogeyman in there.
Yeah.
It was spooky comedy, but it was still kind of that same level of daft with the worms and the bugs and smashing the clock on his head.
Eating Jillian Hall's like massive grotesque thing on her neck.
But yeah, Impact, I've always said with Impact Wrestling has something for everyone.
Yep.
You have technical masterpieces, you have chaotic hardcore bloodbaths, you have spot fests, you have funny stuff, and you have everything in between. And include the knockouts in every level of genre I just labeled and more. You have tag team expertise in there. You have the X division for the cruiserweight and the high speed stuff. Like everything you can find in wrestling, you can find in Impact. And that's something I feel like most other companies don't have that broad spectrum to include everything basically every month. Like you may not get it on every episode, but in any build to any pay-per-view, there's usually something building in every level of the spectrum.
Yep, and that's why I love Impact. That's why Impact is, the wrestling company that won't die. There's always something in it for everybody, and if you just give them a chance, they're worth your time.
Yeah. Speaking of something for everybody, we have the Knockouts tag team title match that came up next. And despite what Barry said, we cannot ignore Taylor Wilde and not talk about it because it happened.
The match tried to.
First and foremost, I was a little surprised to see Jessica here because I thought when they sent her off to get her mimosas, I thought she would be gone with the mimosas.
I was so shocked when she came out. I'm like, wasn't the whole point of Jessica not being in the match to keep her away from the black magic?
Yeah. It was a little weird in that sense.
It was a logic gap that I still don't understand.
The biggest takeaway I had from this match, unfortunately, isn't the match itself. It was the fact that Matt Rehwoldt and Tom Hannafin continually, and not just in this match, ever since she's came back, they continually try to remind us and sell us on Taylor Wilde as a trailblazer of the Knockouts division, as one of the very first Knockouts tag team champions. She's a veteran. She's been doing this for years. She's yada, yada, yada. And I watch Taylor Wilde in the ring and I say, please just stop telling me she's a veteran and I might not hate her wrestling so much.
When I heard the name Rosita, I was like, oh my God, she is that old. I looked on Twitter and I saw the congratulatory post of a friend of ours, Ella J, who is a very big fan of Taylor Wilde, who says that this is Taylor's first title in 13 years.
Yeah,
and it's KiLynn King's first championship for a major promotion.
Well, yeah, and it was 2009 when she won those inaugurals, so that was 13 years, basically. Mm-hmm. So I can get that it's been that long, and again, I feel bad that I'm continually knocking on Taylor Wilde, but she doesn't feel like somebody who should be in this position. If anything, she just feels like she was in the right spot at right time right now, that with Taya's other motives moving down south and doing what she's doing, they needed a way to get her out of this story, and Taylor Wilde just happened to be the one who was in position to do it. And, I mean, congratulations to her. She's obviously done something right that she's been in the business this long, and Impact trusts her to be a champion. It's just...
But wasn't she out of the business? Wasn't she out of the business for years?
I don't entirely know where she's been or what she's been doing, but like to have been a champion 13 years ago, obviously she's done her fair share along the way, right?
Yeah, you
And
would think.
so, I mean, congratulations to her. Hopefully, this is something that actually, works out and becomes something, and maybe she can, go somewhere with it. But yeah, you're right. I did just look out. So she retired in 2011 and came back in 2021. So she was out for some time. But
My thing is they call her a trailblazer, and they bring up all of her past, like the past accomplishment, the one past accomplishment. Like we say past accomplishments, like there's more than one. The past
yeah,
accomplishment of being one of the inaugural tag team champions in the Knockouts division. You want to know who she reminds me of in terms of in-ring skill and ability? The Cat. For those who don't know, that was the little itty bitty girl that Jerry Lawler was dating that pretended that she was China.
and then didn't
And
she
that was
pretend she was
yeah,
somebody else after that? Tori?
I think she pretended she was Tori.
Yeah.
And then she was fired when her and Jerry Lawler broke up and their marriage ended because Jerry Lawler didn't want to work with her no more.
I don't know. I don't know what Taylor Wilde's reasoning was. Maybe she was better back before her retirement. Maybe this is just a matter of, the ring rust that she still hasn't shaken off from being retired for 10 years. Again,
That would what Barry says right here. Taylor Wilde just needs a stuffed black cat, a pointy hat, and a broomstick. At least then I'd pretend like she's a witch, because the whole witch thing doesn't get over with me when all she's doing is pulling out tarot cards.
her character work is starting to feel like she's at least getting into a group. She's feeling it. She's comfortable with who she is in this character, more so than she was with the Let's Go Wild when she first came back in 2021, feuding with the Influence. Like, this feels like it's something more natural for her. And I keep saying it every time she's on TV that I hope she gets there. I hope she finds it. I hope something here helps her. And I did note in this match, and like you said, Impact tried to forget she was in this match or tried to ignore she was in this match. It really did feel like in this match in particular, her flaws were really trying to be hidden just by giving KiLynn the spotlight, because KiLynn is fantastic and KiLynn has been wrestling for a lot longer than Taylor's been back. So
Yeah, KiLynn looked amazing in this match. They hid a lot of Taylor with Taya Valkyrie, which made a lot of sense. When the moments that Taylor was in the match, with the exception of her taking about 20 seconds to get stood in a spot that she wants to do a run, because my God, does that feel weird. Because she stops and she looks and she gets herself in her spot. And just poor Rosemary's just sitting in the corner like, all right, I'm waiting.
yeah. Well, and I think it was the spot in the corner too where she tried to do like the flip over sunset flip and then missed it and just had to turn it into a German.
Yeah. But you know what? She wasn't as bad this week as she's been in the past. I've seen her much worse. The match she had with KiLynn on BTI, one of the weeks that I covered for you, this is much better than that. But again, KiLynn King is a star in the making. This girl is the future of that Impact Knockouts division, with people like Gisele Shaw, with people like Masha Slamovich. I would say Deanna, but I don't know if Deanna's long for that Impact Knockouts division. I hope she is. I want her to stay, but she's always that next option for a lot of other companies that want to increase their women's division.
With Steve Maclin on the rise, I would think that Deanna's probably got some time left in her.
I also liked the Deanna stuff. I don't know where I saw it. I was watching something earlier today, and they had Deanna talking about her getting her degree. And I was really happy about that. I know that has nothing to do with this match, but I don't want to talk about Taylor Wilde anymore.
I want to move away from Taylor too, because we can't entirely focus on the Taylor Wilde in this performance, because from my perspective, and maybe it's looking through rose-colored glasses knowing she's leaving, but this, I feel, was one of my favorite Taya performances since she returned to Impact.
Yeah, this is one of the first times I've seen Taya since, like I said, she hasn't been around much. It was mostly
She looked inspired. She looked energized. She looked like she actually was really into it and really enjoying this match. And maybe it's because she knew this was her last match and she was on her way out. She was looking forward to the future. Maybe it was she was happy for that one last opportunity to team with Rosemary. Whatever the case may be, Taya really felt like she almost carried this match. Like KiLynn looked amazing from KiLynn's side, but it really felt like Taya was the one that this match was being lifted up by. Rosemary did her thing, and Rosemary looked excellent in the ring as well. It's a shame if this is the last we see of Taya Valkyrie in Impact for an extended time now, because I feel like it was not long enough, and she didn't get that opportunity to actually go back for the KO title. Mm-hmm. She had her Reina de Reinas win and title reign, but I would have liked to see Taya going after a Mickey, Taya going after a Jordan, Taya going off after a Deanna and being in some of those singles feuds that we didn't get because she came back and immediately ended up in the tag team feuds instead.
Yeah, I thought that Taya's time in NXT was a missed opportunity. That was a massive, massive drop ball by WWE. She came to Impact, and immediately I'm like, that division is going to profit because she's amazing. Having her go to AEW, she's going to do wonderful things there as long as they get time. But that's going to be a problem that she's going to have to fight alongside all those other girls who don't get time and need time and things like that. That being said, in this match, she was a star. Rosemary played a back seat in this match. It was really the only two things that I can remember about this match is most of this match is, in my mind, Taya Valkyrie versus KiLynn King. And KiLynn King hitting essentially what I feel like is like a reverse riptide, I think is her finish. That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
She does like the pump handle into like what Rhea Ripley would just drop it, and she kind of like flips it and
it looked awkward. I don't know if maybe it was one of her first times hitting that or if it was just the way Taya took it, but it looked weird how it followed through. It looked like it could be a cool move. It just landed weird.
Taya's also, no offense, and obviously me saying this, Taya's a bigger girl than KiLynn. She's got a bit of size on KiLynn. And KiLynn just might not be as comfortable hitting that particular move on a woman the size of Taya.
Maybe.
Because Taya's a thick, beautiful woman. But she's not Taylor Wilde. She's not Killer Kelly. She's not Mickie James. She's not Deonna Purrazzo. She's more... I
mean, I would say Taya and Deonna are pretty comparable, but that's neither here nor there.
I would say I put her in the same realm as I do Jessica. I put her in the same realm as I do Jordan. I put her in that bigger, thicker girl category with Taya.
As we said, KiLynn hits her finish. We never got a name for it. Even on the replay, Tom and Matt didn't have a name for the finish, so I'm curious if she's got a name that she's going to be calling that. But ultimately results in us getting the new Knockouts Tag Team Champions, Taylor Wilde and KiLynn King. I guess kind of one question coming out of this for you, Ed. Mm-hmm. Do you think the obvious or the most likely next step here is that we get Rosemary and Jessica coming back for their rematch? Or do we get this match next week, maybe unannounced, before Taya's actual walkout?
I don't think we see Taya wrestle again. I think we see a backstage segment next week that brings back Havoc or alludes that Havoc's coming. And then at either Sacrifice or Rebellion, I think that's where we get the tag team rematch. And it's Havoc and Rosemary versus the Coven.
Just the way you say that, it makes me wonder now if we could almost see the return of Havoc and the turn of Havoc.
That works too.
That we're ending up in Havoc and Rosemary potentially feuding, maybe Havoc being seduced by the black magic to returning to be Havoc and turning on Rosemary in the rematch to help KiLynn and Taylor retain. something along those lines probably would make some semblance of sense at this point.
And then maybe we get Killer Kelly back in this as, you know, Rosemary's like, the enemy of the enemy is my friend.
It would be nice if this led to the Hex coming back full-time. Maybe we get the Havoc turn, and then Havoc reunites with Father James Mitchell and the Hex joins as a full-time team.
I would love it if the Hex came in. Allison Kay is fantastic. Marty Bell is an ultra-talented young lady in that division. The sky's the limit for the Knockouts title division. The only thing that really struck me as weird in this match was when they said that the Death Dollz were the longest reigning women's tag team champions at like 115 days. And I'm like, that's a bit of an indictment on these titles, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a lot of turnover, right? Like they turn over these titles and they turn over tag teams pretty fast.
I mean, but at least these, in comparison to WWE, at least their tag team titles are on television.
Yeah. Before we get into the main event here, we got the rundown of the next little bit of programming coming up. So we got confirmation of matches for next week. We get Deonna Purrazzo versus Savannah Evans. We get Moose and Brian Myers versus Joe Hendry and Dango. And we get Time Machine of Motor City Machine Guns and Kushida in their warm-up against The Design, which from the graphic I think suggests it's going to be Diener, Khan, and Angels. Although, who knows at this point? Maybe that's how we get to Step 7 for Callahan.
Maybe.
We get the confirmation that the March 30th episode of Impact will be a special live streamed episode from the site of Multiverse United, which will feature a very special, never before seen Josh Alexander versus Kenta match, which I'm super stoked to see because one of my notes from the main event here is that Josh and Kenta is a dream match anywhere in the world at any time. And then we get the rundown for Sacrifice. So we'll go through it again next week, but I'm going to run through what they gave us here. We get Josh Alexander, Rich Swann, and Frankie Kazarian, as Ed has dubbed them Team Impact, taking on the aforementioned Time Machine of Motor City Machine Guns and Kushida. We have Jordan Grace versus Mickie James for the Knockouts Women title. We have Tommy Dreamer and Bully Ray in the Busted Open match, which they did confirm just means it's a first blood match. We have Joe Hendry versus Brian Myers for the Digital Media Championship. We have Trey Miguel versus Santino Marella's hand-picked opponent. We have Jonathan Gresham versus Speedball Mike Bailey, round 2. We have the Bullet Club of Ace Austin and Chris Bay versus TMDK of Shane Haste and Bad Dude Tito. And we have Gisele Shaw versus Deonna Purrazzo, round 462.
Taking one of my unknowns numbers, huh?
Yeah. Because it really feels like this Gisele and Deonna feud has been going on forever. I feel like Chelsea Green has been gone for 3 months, and that's when this feud started.
I don't know what's worse, the fact that feud is still going on, or that Chelsea Green's in WWE as a Karen.
I'm not going to get into the Chelsea Green and WWE character because I do not watch the WWE programming.
Barry Monkey says that talking of that, Will Ospreay is injured. When is Will Ospreay not hurt?
I have not heard any update about the Ospreay and Speedball match right now, but I will be extremely disappointed if that match gets canceled.
They were promoting it heavily tonight.
Yeah.
And while the shows are edited, they have time to re-edit those promotional packages should they need to. Did they really? I missed that. Did they mention Bobby Fish 3 times in passing on commentary today?
I caught it once during the main event. I didn't catch the other 2, I don't think.
Oh, that's scary. Oh, that's terrifyingly scary.
Team Impact versus Bullet Club. I know we've talked a little bit. We teased it earlier when we were talking about the backstage segment that happened. I'm gonna let you kick us off on it, Ed. What were your feelings on this match?
I kind of like this match. It was a bit of a cluster, as a lot of 6-mans are. I thought the ending was nobody knew what to do. Kenta seemed like he was going at about half speed. I don't think we didn't get the Kenta that I'm used to seeing, whether it be New Japan, whether it be NXT. I don't feel like we got the Kenta that I'm used to seeing in this match. Seeing him lined up against Josh Alexander did make me perk up and go, ooh. And it made Josh Alexander say beautiful when he saw that that Kenta got tagged in, as commentary said.
Yeah.
I didn't like that Josh Alexander, all it took was Steve Maclin chilling in the darkest corner of the arena for him to get distracted. That felt a little out of character for Josh Alexander. But overall, the wrestling in this match was great.
So, I had a few thoughts. I was with you on the Josh and Kenta. Like, when Kenta and Josh got tagged in at the same time there, it was definitely just made me perk up and was like, oh, yep, this is what I want to see. Prior to that, though, Frankie Kazarian and Chris Bay were the two that started this match. They had a really, really hot start and a fast start. Give me more of this. I want Chris Bay and Frankie Kazarian to give me a full-blown X Division match, because these two can go. And when we tagged on both sides and got to Ace Austin and Rich Swann, I was like, okay, like these two are pretty fast. They can go too. And they felt like they just slowed things right to a snail pace. I was like, okay, that was a bit of a letdown. And then we got the Josh and Kenta segment. And then we just kind of got a lot of the back and forth, and it got a little bit hard to follow at times with all of the back and forth and the shenanigans from the outside and everybody jumping in and, 3-on-3 action that's spreading all around the ring and outside the ring and in the ring and out of the ring. And the ending point, I get what you're saying. It is out of character for Josh to get distracted by that. But what I took away from it was kind of a bit of what we talked about on last week's Making an Impact. That they're telling so many stories right now. And this is where it feels like it's catching up. Like they mentioned even on, I think it was on BTI, they mentioned about Josh. Oh, he's got a lot on his plate right now. He's got the 6-man coming up at Sacrifice. He's got the match with Kushida taking place at Multiverse, and he's got Steve Maclin in the binoculars looking out at Rebellion. He's got so much on his plate. And Maclin keeping himself present and just chipping away at that. I feel like we're starting to see Alexander get a little bit overwhelmed by everything he's facing here. And just this single moment of him taking his eye off the ball, of him losing focus, I think is that first sign that he's starting to see he may have bit off more than he can chew.
My biggest problem with it wasn't so much that Josh got distracted, because like you said, I like the fact that Josh got distracted. I agree. I wholeheartedly feel like it's out of character, but it's a good thing because it's giving like you say, it's giving development to his character. But it's not something we normally see. Josh is normally unflappable in the midst of everything. Josh normally can control himself. But it was the fact that Steve was in the darkest corner of the arena. It's not like he was on the rampway where I think you should have put him.
Maclin's in his head. I think that's the significance here is Josh has Maclin on the brain. Maclin's in his head. He's looking too far forward. He's ready. He knows he's got Maclin right over his shoulder at every moment. That even with Maclin being as hidden and tucked away as possible, Josh still saw him because all he's thinking about is Maclin, and he can pick his face up in the darkest corner of a building because it's stuck in his brain.
And I like that because it's like, while it makes everything that Josh does between here and Rebellion feel small, it makes me want to see the match at Rebellion that much more.
Yeah. And I mean, Josh and Kushida, no, I don't think anybody believes that Kushida really stands a chance in that match. But these two were such masterful storytellers and in-ring competitors that even knowing the outcome of the match, I believe Josh Alexander and Kushida will tell me a story with enough relevance and significance that they will probably have me bite on a near fall at least once, if not twice, in that match.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Kushida's one of the best in the world for a reason. Predictable isn't always bad. Just because we know the outcome of something doesn't mean it's going to be bad. Barry brings up a good point. The crowd was really on Bullet Club's side against Impact's own biggest faces. Here's the thing. Bullet Club is going to be over no matter where they go, because the Bullet Club is what's over. Granted, I know people like Ace Austin, they like Bay, but when you see Kenta come in, when you bring in the name Bullet Club, it's something special. It's like DX. It's like the NWO. There's something special about the Bullet Club that's bigger than anything else. So when you bring that in, yeah, the crowd likes them because they're Bullet Club.
Ace Austin and Chris Bay, despite being the Bullet Club, are one of the most over acts in Impact right now.
I agree. Oh no, I agree.
And bringing Kenta at their side just makes them much more significant. I felt like Frankie got the biggest chant of the night, which was really cool to see, despite the crowd being so on the side of Bullet Club. There was a point mid-match here where we got a really loud Frankie chant, and that caught my attention enough to take note of it. Because I think the Impact faithful just love Frankie Kazarian for what he brings to the table and what he's done for Impact, and basically the fact that he shunned AEW to come back to Impact.
Yeah, and the other thing is we didn't mention it earlier, but in the promo where we were talking about the promo that Team Impact did pre-match, they were talking, and he's like, I've been taking out Bullet Club for a long, long time, going back to the fact that he's been the Bullet Club hunter. And the elite hunter in multiple companies.
Yep.
And he's been taking out Bullet Club members left, right, and center.
Yeah. Back to Kenny Omega being Impact World Champion before Christian took it off of him. It was Frankie Kazarian as the elite hunter that was chasing Kenny Omega around between AEW and Impact the entire time.
Yeah, and then he was also chasing the Good Brothers at one point.
Yeah.
Which is where I bring it back to Bullet Club. Here, obviously it's a stolen gimmick from Yoshihashi, but it's that same idea.
Yeah. I felt it was a lot of good storytelling in this match, though. Coming back to the match, that Josh being distracted, showing that crack, showing Josh losing his focus, having Maclin on the brain, having his eyes too far ahead, having too many stories going on, too many places he's supposed to be trying to focus on, and then also giving Bullet Club the victory here, because Ace and Bay and Kenta they're too strong. Like, how do you put one of them in the position to take the L right now? Rich Swann is somebody that, despite taking a lot of L's in the last couple years, is still over. You're not going to lose that for a Rich Swann, because he's just somebody who's so dedicated and gives his heart and soul that he can continue to take some bigger losses like this and be the fall guy without really hurting his credibility.
And especially when you do it where you have both Ace and Bay hit that cool sequence tag team finish where Bay goes flying through the air at one point.
Well, yeah, the launching cutter launching art of finesse. Yeah. Really. Like, where Austin throws him into the art of finesse, and then Austin comes running out of the corner and hits the fold.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic.
The other piece coming out of this now is, with Josh losing his focus here, is this a crack going into Sacrifice where we're going to have Kazarian and Swann start questioning, like, you lost your focus and cost us the match. Like, how can we trust you now at Sacrifice to be able to get us through the time machine? Mm-hmm. So there's lots of different pieces and niches and wrinkles coming out of this. And I think we credited them for being able to carry so many stories at once last week. And now we're seeing the weight of those stories really weighing down Josh's shoulders.
Yeah. But I felt like this was one of the only stories for Sacrifice, with the exception of creating the new story between Bailey and Gresham. This felt like the only Sacrifice story that got told this week.
I mean, everything else had a little bit, right? You had the Jordan and Mickey segment. You had the Dreamer segment. You had the Joe Hendry and Brian Myers segment, and then you had the Gisele and Deanna segment.
Okay, I forgot about I didn't think about the Deanna Gisele stuff. Everything else kind of felt, I mean, the digital media championship stuff is what it is. But anything for like stuff that we knew about going in, anything else for building to the next show felt kind of forced. Like we said, with Mickey and Tommy and Jordan in that segment, it felt like a forced segment. Like, oh, we have to do this because we have to tell this part of the story going into next week.
The most noticeable absence of the week for me is that we didn't get Trey Miguel at all.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's intentional because Trey has been talking a lot about the fact that he was left off No Surrender. And he hasn't really been a focal point, and he hasn't been featured, and that Impact's kind of ignoring him and not celebrating the fact that he's, one of the best X Division champions ever. And it's a neat little way of doing it, but it's unfortunate for a guy the skill and talent that Trey Miguel has to be consistently being left off these shows.
Yeah, especially when you're building a match between him and a mystery opponent, and you're not bringing him on the show. He should have been on this show demanding Santino tell him who his opponent was.
Yeah.
And we're going to get that segment next week. And Santino might drop the ball as to who it is. But I feel like it should have been, as soon as it was announced that that's what's going to happen, we should be seeing once or twice a night Trey Miguel being up, Santino's thing. Or having a digital media exclusive. Yep. Where we have Trey Miguel trying to get a hold of Santino. And being like, who's my opponent? I need to prepare. Who's my hand-picked opponent?
I know this isn't going to happen. But how fun would it be if Trey's opponent was Kozlov?
That'd be fantastic. I had a different idea. What if the opponent is Santino? What if Santino's the opponent? I feel like it would be a major disappointment if it's Dango. Like, having Kozlov there tonight feels like a big deal. If it was Kozlov, I think it'd be great. Especially if Trey wins. If Trey somehow finds a way to beat Kozlov.
Now, the thing is, this was recorded in Vegas.
It was.
Sacrifice is taking place in Windsor, Ontario.
Mm-hmm.
Last time we saw Bobby Fish was when they were in New York. I want to say in Buffalo.
Might have been.
Which is very, very close to Windsor, Ontario.
It is, unfortunately.
It's very possible that they could bring somebody like that. I mean, Windsor is just barely across the border from Detroit as well. That I'm sure there's plenty of talented guys from Detroit that I can't think of off the top of my head that we could see coming into this position as well.
Yep.
Or very talented Canadian wrestlers in the Ontario wrestling scene. Like, who knows at this point? There's any number of guys we could see in this match.
It could be Kenny King.
It could be Eddie Edwards. I mean, it could be PCO. PCO is not on the card yet.
It won't be Kenny King because I have a feeling we're going to get Kenny King and Eddie Edwards versus PCO.
Yeah.
Anyways.
That's the show.
That was the show.
That took us a little bit less time than last week.
I mean, we've spent the last 10 minutes kind of ranting and raving about, things that are coming and things like that. We could have had this show on... Maybe... Impact could afford to try it and bring them in. I don't know if I'd take that big a swing.
Yeah. I mean...
Trey would be happy. I think Trey would be ecstatic to have one of the Rascals back in the company.
There's a lot of options out there. Ed, we've wrapped up the show. We finished talking Impact for tonight. I want you to tell me who your Impact Maker was.
My Impact Maker of the night was Santino Marella. No, I'm kidding. It's KiLynn King. KiLynn King, she owned that tag team match. She didn't, for as young as she is, she didn't feel out of place with Rosemary and Taya in that match. She felt like she belonged. Everything she did felt like it fit. Her character in this match as part of this new group fits. I was really, really impressed with KiLynn King tonight.
She absolutely did. I am going to go way off the board. Way off the board. I'm going to take us off on another conversation here for a couple seconds with my Impact Maker, because I'm not going to go with an Impact Maker of the week. I'm going to go with my impact maker of the entire week, not just this week's Impact Wrestling. And I'm going to say Scott D'Amore. Because Scott D'Amore has done so much for Impact Wrestling over the last 20 years. That man has been through it all, from back when I first got introduced to him on Team Canada, through everything along the way, his GM role. And if you hadn't already heard the news, I don't know where you've been as far as Impact Wrestling, but Scott D'Amore this week was promoted to the president of Anthem, I believe, right? Or just the president of Impact.
I missed it, so sorry. I'll look it up now, though.
Currently, he's been written off of TV since the attack by Bully Ray on him, but he was promoted into the position of president this week. This is a huge step for Anthem Sports, for Impact Wrestling, for Access TV's investment in Impact Wrestling. I believe Scott D'Amore is the man for what he has done for Impact since the move away from the TNA branding and trying to build this company and keep it afloat and get it back to a position of respectability, that if Impact is going to go for another 20 years, Scott D'Amore is the man I want at the head of that ship, guiding them in the direction, because I have the faith that that man, based on his track record within the company, is a very, very smart, talented, capable leader, and the guy that will be able to put everybody in the right positions to succeed.
Yeah, and his official title, as of his own personal Twitter, is President of Impact Wrestling and Executive Vice President of ASG for Anthem Sports Entertainment.
Yeah, that's a huge move for him. It's a huge move for Anthem and for Impact, and I'm going off the board by not picking a wrestler on tonight's show. There were plenty of impactful performances, Taya and KiLynn King not the least among them. But I just have to give the credit where it's due to Scott this week and put that spotlight on him, because without him on TV, we don't really get the opportunity to talk about the impact he is having on the Impact product.
Yeah, absolutely. Scott D'Amore, since Anthem has taken over and everybody jumped ship, he's come in and been a stabilizing force to keep them going in the same direction. And he's a great wrestling mind that is constantly overlooked for other people when you want to give credit where credit is due for the Impact Wrestling. Scott D'Amore, like you said, I remember him as the loudmouth, mouthy bastard in Team Canada. And now he's the guy running the show.
Yeah, and the stuff he's done, just the crossovers, right? The fact that we've seen Impact with Mickie James make an appearance on WWE under his reign. We've seen Davey Richards come over from MLW during his reign. We have seen Kenny Omega and it back and forth with Tony Khan and Scott D'Amore through all of the different characters from All Elite Wrestling that have made their appearances. We have seen consistent crossover with Impact and NJPW. We've seen him bring in and home a lot of the unhomed ROH wrestlers after ROH went under and before their buyout from Tony Khan and then their subsequent firing by Tony Khan. Scott D'Amore, and I saw this, I believe it was Eddie Edwards' interview that I shared this week on my Twitter, where Eddie Edwards basically called it the land of broken toys. And that really feels like it's what it is. And Scott D'Amore almost seems like the pink strawberry bear from Toy Story 3 that brings in all the broken toys and just makes them at home and makes it feel like a happy family.
Scott D'Amore is one of the greatest people in wrestling, just bar none, period, end of story. I hope if you don't induct Mickie James into the Impact Hall of Fame this year, I hope it's Scott D'Amore.
I would agree, although I would say at this point, with him being in the position he's in, Scott D'Amore is somebody well deserving of a Hall of Fame induction, but I would save it until he's done.
I would even say, even if you're just going to do it and base it off of the Team Canada stuff.
Yeah, you could easily induct Team Canada as a whole.
Yeah, bring Bobby back, bring A1 back, because Triple H will let Bobby Roode come back. Vince will let Eric Young, Triple H will let Eric Young come back if he is so under contract like everybody believes he is to WWE. I have no problem believing that you can get all of Team Canada back.
Yeah. And even if it's not this year, I mean, there's plenty of time still to do that too. But I do believe Scott D'Amore is an easy choice to go into the Impact Hall of Fame at some point. But now that he's running the ship, he's still writing his legacy. You don't put him into the Hall of Fame until you can have the full script.
I don't think Tommy Dreamer will leave. I think Tommy Dreamer is going to stay until somebody kicks him out. Sadly enough. But talk about being kicked out. Me! You can find me on Twitter at EdFries12584. You can find me on Twitch at EdFries2002. Starting this weekend, I will be streaming my GM mode of WWE 2K23 as I begin the GM mode there, because unfortunately I can't play any My Faction or download any community creations right now. Because
Did you figure out your controller?
I finally figured out my controller. I watched a video and figured out how to do that. To change it so that, because I use a PlayStation controller and Steam likes to have everything as an Xbox thing. But you can find me there. You can also find me every Tuesday night hosting Taking Over with Astrid Pizarro, the normal co-host here. And next week is going to be a very special episode. We're going to have the Astrid birthday bash next week on Taking Over. She's not excited in the slightest, which makes me very excited. Astrid loves birthday parties, but only if they're not hers. And to find Astrid, you can find her on Twitter at Astrid Pizarro, on Instagram at Astrid Pizarro20, and on Twitch right here at twitch.tv/Astrid Pizarro.
I love that that's wrong and it says twitch.com.
Yeah, and I
can probably point that out to her to fix it.
I constantly just overtalk it so that I don't have to worry about it. But yeah, it is definitely wrong. And
for me, right there at Cody Defoe every week. I'm always on there. I share when we're going live. I share our stuff. I try and share about different wrestling things as they come up. Give me a follow on Twitter. I'll be happy to answer comments, to pop in, to follow back, to give you any likes and retweets about anything you're doing as well. For myself, you can find me every Thursday as I can possibly make it, right here on Making an Impact with typically Astrid, or obviously Oled, who happens to be our wonderful friend and fill-in when one of us cannot make the show. I also want to make official for everyone watching, I have finally got confirmation for 2 weeks from tonight. We will have a very special episode of Making an Impact, crossing over with the NJPW Pure Reso review with Andre C. and Melball Collins, where Astrid and myself will be joined by the two of them for a 4-person watch-along of Multiverse United. Definitely join us on here. We should be on Astrid's Twitch. We should be on Melball's Twitch. We may be on OLE. We may be on Backbreaker. Definitely keep a follow. Keep your eyes peeled. Really excited to be able to do that with two amazing people who are doing amazing work, talking and reviewing and keeping eyes on the NJPW product, as well as the Stardom product they follow. Multiverse United is going to be a great show. We're really excited to all get to be on screen together and hope you can join us and join the conversation and watch along with us. Would love to have you there and conversing as we're watching the show in real time. That said, there will not be a regular Making an Impact on the 30th, as it's a special live episode anyhow. So pop in. It'll be a little later start time, as the show itself starts a little later, but we'll be going the entirety of the show, so it'll be a late night, and would love to have you there.
Yeah. It's going to be a whole bunch of fun. I just had Andre on Taking Over this Tuesday, filling in for Astrid. He did a fantastic job. So it's a whole bunch of fun having friends who watch wrestling.
And April 14th to 16th, I will be in Toronto going live to Rebellion and the Rebellion tapings. So again, in my stead, I believe Oled will be joining Astrid for that sacrifice, or for that Rebellion review potentially. That's it.
Financial details are being worked. Yeah, financial details are being worked out. We'll figure out how it goes.
We'll just buy you something else orange.
There we go.
Thanks a lot, Barry, for joining us. Thanks, Mel, for popping in. Thanks, everybody else, if you're just lurking and joining us after hours. Definitely, if you've missed the live, always remember to check it out on Backbreaker Media's YouTube channel. Every Monday it launches there. For myself, I'm the Foe. This is Oled. Have a great night, everyone.